Hello, welcome back to another video on Japanese swords, this time specifically Japanese military sword, gunto. Little bit of a misnomer because gunto means first military sword. These weren't the first military swords, but they're the first more like widespread used military swords. They have a very European appearance, which you'll see in the examples that I'll show in a little bit. And there's really two types. There's type 8 and type 19. Type 8 is meant to represent the 8th year of the rule of Emperor Meiji, 1875, and type 19 would be the 19th year. Now we got to do some math. Hold on, 1886. Hopefully that's right. So 1875 and 1886, and they differ in ornamentation, but they also differ in depending on rank. So I'll show you examples of those as we go around. I'm going to look for the earlier ones and show you the mountings, the fittings, and the blades. And paying close attention to, I don't have any of the fakes here. I don't have fake reproduction gunto, but they're out there. And I'll try to mention the differences between those when you look at them so you know what to watch out for. If you see something, especially if you see something that appears too good to be true on eBay or another site, and if it looks too new. Like, wow, that looks really nice. It's all shiny and everything. You know, that should be an indicator. All right, so I'm going to find a type 8 here to show you, and you'll see how the ornamentation is pretty bare. It has a European appearance, right? The knuckle bow, back strap, and it doesn't quite look like what you would consider a Japanese samurai sword, you know? Could have a samurai blade, which I think it does. But I bought this from Japan. I didn't go to Japan. I bought it from Japan. At the time, pretty good deal. And it does have something of a signature on the mounts. It's hard to see from that angle. But on one side, our characters there with the owner's name, and on the underside I know there's characters that say Seiro, meaning Russia is defeated, or victory over Russia. So this was most likely used in the Russo-Japanese War, early 1900s, I think 1905. If I got that date wrong, I'm sorry. And a lot of these swords were used in that conflict. And as you can see, this is on pretty tight. So this locking mechanism definitely works. It still works. And it has the original tassel. It's a brown leather tassel. And this is what the underside should look like. Give you a little bit of a slower look at that. The lack of ornamentation on the back strap. And I finally got this to come out of the scabbard without being too rough. So it has a nice silver foil plated habaki there. And this blade is in really good polish. Again, we're going to slide it out carefully because I don't want to scratch the side of the blade against the scabbard. And the polish is in pretty good shape. Trying to show as much detail here as I possibly can. It's not a terribly long blade, and I'm sorry, this video I don't have time to take these out of the scabbard, out of the handle, and show you too much. I don't have time to take it apart. I'm just trying to show examples of genuine swords. This is an antique blade because it's got some patination under here. It's in its original polish, in really good shape, but this is a Type 8 Army gunto. And I'll show the difference now between the Type 8 and Type 19. Then we'll go over the difference between the Type 8, Type 19, and the Navy patterns. I have a naval sword as well. So This is more of your standard. Reaching this up here. This is more of your standard Type 19 gunto. Some of them have one hanger, some of them have two. The lower one is removable. I don't want to force it off. Why force it off? But lower mount is removable. And these scabbards are either chrome or nickel plated steel. They can come with various dents and wear. It's very unusual to have no dents or no wear. And this one has a silver family mon on the back. Now these were like soldered or pinned on, sometimes both. And like the other sword I showed you, the handle is stingray skin wrapped with this wire. Now what this wire is very difficult to obtain for repairing it. I think I saw somebody from China just offered it for sale. It looks convincing. I haven't tried it yet. I haven't had to. I sourced replacement wire from somebody years ago who made it, but they didn't have a lot of it. Because what it is, it's a very thin, coiled, twisted wire. If you look close, it's wire that's twisted together and then coiled with this really, really fine brass wire. So it's very difficult to find that. And again, these silver family mons, getting back to the mon, these tended to be a sign that the officer was from a higher class family, like a better family, a family that had a history, usually a samurai background history. And a lot of the blades that are in these type of gunto fittings and the Type 8, this Type 19 that I showed you, are hereditary blades, like they were passed down in the family, and they were put into military mounts to take off to the war. And some of you might be thinking, well, why would they risk something that's like a family heirloom and put it in mounts and take it off to war? Well, for various reasons, and I guess if you don't think you're going to lose, what's the risk? But we don't know how that worked out. So that's why I have these. So we could take this out of the scabbard. This locking mechanism doesn't work. It's rather loose in here. But this blade is in pretty good shape still. It's old. It's tired. But overall, it's in pretty good shape. And again, I'll try to get some details of the hammer in there as much as I can focus on it. Say there's some openings in the blade, but there is temper line that goes through the point, through the boshi. There's no bends, there's no cracks. It's straight. I'll show the other side. And I'm trying to show you detail of what you should see in a genuine example. And these vary in length as well, the guntos. Sometimes you'll see them long, sometimes you'll see them very long, and sometimes you see them short or very short. And some people will say, oh, that depended upon, was it carried in a tank or an airplane? But I have uncovered evidence to point out that it's not so much that. That wasn't the consideration. It was more like the person's stature and what they preferred. A shorter person's going to have a shorter sword. I mean, I know guys who are humongous. I can't have blades as long as they have. I'd fall over. So it depended upon more what the wearer was going to use and need it for. If you spent a lot of your time sitting at a desk, you can have a long sword. What the heck? But that tended to be for, higher ranks, of course. So those are examples of Type 8 and Type 19 swords. What we're going to look at now is an example at a field officer's example of a Type 19. So this one is a little unusual for several features, which I'll go over in a minute. This has a more highly decorated backstrap, as you could see, the field officer's example. I think field officer is anything from major on up, excluding general. All general officer swords had a tortoise shell, tortoise shell handle material. I think the hawksbill turtle material. And there's I have one of those. I'll show you in another video because it's a parade sword, and I'll go when I go over parade gunto or parade Japanese swords, Japanese military swords. So this is a field officer's example, and it originally had a leather combat cover, which I didn't get. You can tell because there's impressions of like here where buttons used to be, and the scabbard is just in too good a shape. That it wasn't covered by some sort of protector that maybe like rotted apart before I bought it. But it did come with this original knot, and I could go over knots. That's a whole different topic as well. Go over knots another time. This one's actually very highly decorated. Looks very nice. It's got a screw holding the blade in. The blade is just an Arsenal produced blade. It's not handmade, maybe hand finished, maybe partially handmade, but it's nothing terribly special. The unique feature of this, and this almost never happens, is there's no habaki, as you can see. Maybe it was thought that one wasn't needed. It's original without habaki. It's not like it was messed with after the fact. As you can see, the polish is in pretty good shape. The dimensions are a little weird, meaning it's thick, but rather narrow up front here. But it is definitely genuine and original. I think the temper line was done with Hadori. You get the Hadori temper line with polishing stones, although probably oil tempered, and the oil tempered Hammond tend to be a bit more subdued than the water tempered Hammond. So that's unusual. It's not terribly big. It's katana length, but just barely, and it fits in one hand. So we could put that back now, and I'll go over another example of a field officer's sword. This is another field officer's army gunto, but this time there's that silver family mon there. And these mon, these badges, different families use different mon, but sometimes they shared it. And then there was a ka mon, which is had to be registered, but that's a whole different topic. But this one, interestingly enough, also has the polished same, just like this other officer's example, field officer's example. This is a field officer's example again with the polished, the same, the ray skin. And again, as you can see, the decoration is a little different. There were some variation in these gunto because the army put out guidelines for these, but they weren't exacting 100% specific on what had to be where. And there were different manufacturers who made them. So if you take this out, this slides out. This one has more of an ancestral blade and a nice gold foil habaki. Gold or brass foil, I can't tell. Doesn't matter to me. So again, that has a 2-hanger scabbard, chrome-plated steel scabbard with wooden liners. And I'll try to show the detail on this blade as much as I can. This blade is just at katana length. It's not crazy long, but it is really nice. The polish is in excellent state of polish. There's definitely a grain to the blade. Shows lots of social characteristics. A flat mune, flat ridge on the back of the mune, and some very minor flaws, but overall a lot of activity and a definite itame mokume grain, itame mokume blend. So that sword is in a great state of polish. We'll put that back. And next we can go over a naval gunto. Now the only naval gunto I have doesn't have the Navy approved scabbard. It has the samurai sword scabbard. This is probably the original scabbard. Needs some fixing, but it's mostly original, mostly in great shape. That's why I kept it with this sword. And notice in the naval examples, the difference is there's this fold down flap that on the Navy approved scabbard would have gone to a little button here to help lock it in so it doesn't come out. So there's a leaf design there, and there can be differences in the leaf design, but they're not, that's not an extremely important point. This one also has a silver family mun on the back, and you'll notice on the naval gunto, there's no side ears here. There's no side decoration as there is on the Army gunto. This Army, Navy. And this is another sword with an ancestral or, traditionally made samurai blade. And take this out. This sword is also in great shape, not crazy long, but in great shape. And it's a nicely done habaki there. It looks like a gold or brass foil, some kind of design. I don't know. And this one is also in really good shape. I'm trying to hold it up to the camera and get as great a picture as I can on this. All right. There's the other side. And this one has more of a suguha, like a more or less medium straight hamon. And you also might notice a cat. You have cats, you have lots of animals around here. It's like a petting zoo. So put this back, and this is the cat that loves swords. I don't know why. Why do you love weird cat? All right, so put that back, and then you can get another example here of a cavalry gunto. Yes, the Japanese into World War I, World War II era still employed some cavalry units on horses, like horse cavalry units. I don't know what they did, or if they did much, or how those horses ended up, or if they switched over to like tanks. I don't know, but I know there's a specific cavalry pattern because I have it right here. And what distinguishes the cavalry pattern from the Army and Navy patterns is more of this rounded back. This is the decoration on the regular officers. This is not a field officer. The field officer's cavalry sword, cavalry gunto, had more of a fully decorated backstrap. This is, I guess, you call a regular officer's cavalry gunto. I don't think this is original. This is just what could be found. This is how I got it. Now these are just the mounts. The blade in here is just to hold it in place, but it does have nice thick seppa. Everything else is very original to this sword except for the blade. My guess is I got this from Japan, so somebody in Japan figured out, oh my, the blade is going to be worth more than the fittings, or I want the blade more than the fittings, so I'll just take the blade. What they replaced it with is actually very nice. It's an aluminum Eido blade, but it's nice. So put this back. And the next example is a little bit of a different version of the Army gunto. This Mukugi Ana, this Mukugi, not the Ana is the whole. This Mukugi is not built in to these fittings. This may be an earlier variation of the Type 19 gunto. This one doesn't screw apart. Sometimes they screw apart. This one pops off. If I'm, maybe I can get it apart. No, I can't get it apart without damaging it. I don't want to do that now. So it's got two Mukugi essentially. This one goes through the sword, this one here, and this one does as well. So there's a bamboo Mukugi here and a brass one here. It's in two parts. See? That's the other side. And this one is also highly curved. I made this scabbard as best I could because it didn't come with the scabbard, but you get what you get. This polish is in pretty good shape too. It does have some light pitting, but the blade is sharp and it is a handmade traditional, again, like Japanese samurai sword. It is signed, but I do think this, again, the signature is fake. Like I mentioned in the previous video, most signed Japanese swords, even the antique Japanese swords, most times the signatures are not genuine. It's not the maker. And that was not always done with the intention to deceive. Sometimes it was done because gifts of swords were traded back and forth, especially between well-to-do people, and it was kind of necessary that you had to have a sword from a famous or semi-famous maker. So sometimes it was like everybody knew it wasn't really by that person, but you just accepted it for what it was claimed to be. Yeah, that's the kind of the Japanese way. They're not Italians. I live with them, you know. they would have pointed it out right away. Hey, what is this? The Japanese don't roll like that. So we have two more examples to show. For now, again, these are all from my collection. This is a longer Q gunto, a rather long Type 19 Army Q gunto. Again, with the original knot. And that's at the bottom of the knot should look like, right? And the decoration is rather nice. And again, this one has another silver family mon there. And the scabbard, this scabbard has been painted. Probably was damaged a little bit, and somebody painted, I don't know who painted it, but this was left chrome. So this is a higher quality mill steel made blade in these mounts, because even the mill steel made or the factory made blades varied in quality. Sometimes you get a blade that, you know, it has very little or no signs of a temper line on it, and the whole thing was oil quenched, and it was just, okay, well, here's a blade that we think could be of some service. Go ahead and use it. And some all the way to the quality that you get, like this. It's not signed. It was probably mostly machine made, but it does have a temper line, albeit an oil quench temper line. I don't think this is a water quench temper line. There's not a ton of detail to it. The blade is rather sharp, but also rather narrow towards the point. And while it doesn't have flaws necessarily, it's got some minor damage, just, I think, from age. Because, like I said, well, the Japanese soldiers might have cared for these as treasured possessions and their weapons. That doesn't mean the GIs who got them as souvenirs thought the same of them. I think this has a silver foiled habaki. I mean, sometimes these swords, after they were brought back from the war, were rather well cared for, and sometimes they were just thrown into dank, musty conditions or in a barn or a garage or something. And only to be discovered years later that, oh man, this might actually be worth something. So, never mind that noise in the background. That's the cat messing with my wife's stuff. Don't do that. What do you... Anyway, this is yet another example of an Army Type 19 Q gunto. And you might notice, see, that's in a little bit of a different position there. A little bit different on the ornamentation. And this one, as you can see, used to have a silver family mon, most likely removed by the officer surrendering this sword at the end of World War II. And that happened on occasion where either the knots were removed by the officer surrendering, or this was removed or defaced because they thought that action might bring, you know, less or no shame upon their family name upon surrender. I guess little did they know that probably the American or British servicemen or other Allied servicemen receiving it wouldn't know what family that mon was from in a million years, so they didn't care. But sometimes the officers surrendering it cared. And I also have rifles in similar condition, which I'll go over in another video. So again, this has the stingray skin, and most times on the better examples, you'll see the larger nodule stingray skin at this part of the sword working its way down. Like this is the belly of the stingray skin. The better part is here, working its way over here. And this sword, again, the signature is fake. It's signed Sukesada. Sukesada is like, you find a sword. If I see another Sukesada sword, oh my word. Well, there were Sukesada smiths, you know, genuine signatures. Most of them are false. This one's fake too, and like blatantly fake because it has ubuha right here. Ubuha means on a lot of swords made recently, meaning like from the late 1800s into World War II, they have this length of blade unsharpened. I don't know exactly why. Maybe it's to absorb the shock from the habaki better. I don't know. It's just a theory. So this says Ubuha, but it is signed with a older Smith's signature. But it's a nice blade overall. I wish it didn't have any signature because it's water tempered. It's rather sharp. It's in excellent condition. There's a clear grain to the sword, to the blade. And it's a pretty thick sword too. It's a beautiful and functional weapon. It just has a Gime signature. No. Which is really its only detraction. Well, that and the missing mon. But it does allow me to detail it as a historical example. So that's what I have in my collection for gunto Type 8, Type 19 combat swords. And in my next video, I'll go over examples of gunto parade swords. There was no parade version of the Army Shin gunto, the more traditional looking sword. Well, that's not entirely true. They're just very, very rare, and they're hard to distinguish and find. But again, I'll mention that in the next video. Most of the parade swords will have a look similar to this, but again, we'll go over that in the next video. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was somewhat informative about Japanese military gunto swords, and feel free to comment and or ask a question for more information. Thank you. Bye, y'all.